Good morning, everyone. I am Gina Sudam. I'm the president of the Wyoming County Chamber of Commerce, and you have joined us this morning for our Restart, Rebound, Rebuild series. We are in the Rebuild segment, which means for us that we're going to walk you through a series of workshops. This morning's workshop is going to give you a tool to help you with your PPP forgiveness. It's a very basic tool developed in Excel that will just show you some of the things that have changed with PPP and will help you to keep track of those expenses as you go through your now 24-week period. So let's start there with the changes to the PPP. On Friday, after our call, which we went over all of those changes on Friday, and you can go back and listen certainly to that webinar that is recorded and posted on our website. But we went over all of the Paycheck Protection Program, the Flexibility Act, and I have Tyler Emmerich here who's just going to walk you through a couple of those key changes for the Payroll Protection Flexibility Act. And that, again, was signed by the President on Friday, so that is into law at this point. So Tyler, would you just get started and go over those few changes to the Paycheck Protection Program?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Thanks, Gina. Thank you, Debbie and Allison, for continuing this series and keeping everybody in the loop on everything. You guys are doing a great job with it. So Matt Schaefer had talked about these items, I believe it was Friday. And so I'll just reiterate, basically the three important ones are the forgiveness period has now been extended to 24 weeks instead of 8 weeks. That's a big one. So your original loan, if you applied for $100,000, you now have 24 weeks to meet the expenses to get to that number instead of eight weeks. And this is going to be helpful for this spreadsheet that Gina's talking about, an Excel spreadsheet that can help you guys. But you need to know these three things before she gets into that. So the other item is instead of the 60-40 forgiveness rules, you had to spend 60% of the loan funds on payroll.
No, the other way around, Tyler. Initially, it was 75.
I'm sorry, initially it was 75-25. Now it's 60-40. So currently you have to spend 60% of the loan funds on payroll, and then the other 40 would be on things like rent, mortgage interest, utilities. So there's another big change. And then another one, I don't know that we spent a lot of time on this on Friday, but all the new PPP loans have a 5-year maturity instead of the original 2-year maturity. Anybody that was in that first wave of the PPP still does have a 2-year loan maturity, but the new ones are 5-year. So I think there's some other items, but those are the three things to focus on with this Excel spreadsheet.
All right, great, thanks, Tyler. I am going to share my screen with you. So let's make sure this works here. First of all, can you all see the Excel spreadsheet on my screen? Okay, so these are my made-up numbers for my pretend PPP loan. And again, this is a very basic spreadsheet. What I did was I said, this is the date, this yellow date, 5/15, this is the date we deposited the PPP loan into my account. And again, we have said from the very beginning, please deposit this money in a separate standing account so that you can easily reconcile, so that you can easily track your expenses and your costs. I know this is a little difficult when we're talking about payroll because a lot of times you pay payroll out of a standing account. So maybe you don't want to kind of transfer all those payroll transactions, right? But what you can do is say, okay, I paid my payroll out of this other account, I'm going to transfer the amounts. So again, talk to your bookkeeper if that sentence just kind of confused you a bit, but I would try as much as you can to pay all of your expenses out of one account. So what I did is I said, I received my PPP funds on 5/15/20. Under the new rule of 24 weeks, that extends my covered period to October 30th of 2020. Now, what I did in my spreadsheet is I also left the 8 weeks because many of you have already received this money and your 8 weeks is up, and you may just want to get all this taken care of and off your plate so you don't have to worry about it anymore, right? So I did leave that in this spreadsheet. If that's irrelevant to you, just ignore it. So then what I did is I said, okay, the amount of my PPP loan was $120,000. So I took that $120,000 and I said, if I need to spend 60% on payroll costs, that equals $72,000. Okay. And then this spreadsheet down here, all of this is me just making up the numbers. So you can see when I change this 120,000, if I said I only received 50,000, it's going to change my total remaining funds column. Okay, so it's a pretty simple spreadsheet and way to walk through all of your expenses and kind of keep track of them. What I did here is this remaining payroll amount is the 72,000 less whatever is in these 3 columns. So payroll, additional payroll, and that's if you gave anyone a bonus or tips that you might not pay directly through your payroll system, anything that you would want to, commissions, anything that you would want to track separately. And then any group health insurance can be included in your total payroll cost. So those 3 columns all add up and subtract from your available payroll cost to give you a remaining payroll balance, right? So once this amount is expended, then you can spend any other amounts on all these utilities. So this just helps you to keep track of what's still available and out there for payroll. It gives you an idea of what that total number needs to look like. So those are, again, that's just a quick walkthrough of this spreadsheet. I'm sure many of you have developed other tools. If you, again, in my spreadsheet, if I said, oh, I received the money, maybe back on, 4/15 or 4/17, you can just change this date here and it changes the other dates in your spreadsheet for you. Should actually make this date change as well. So I'll do that. So that's kind of a breakdown of this. We want these workshops to be interactive. Tyler, do you have questions and comments? Let's start there, because this is based off of a tool that you showed me. So
I think just on a higher level, I don't think everyone even knows how to use Excel necessarily. Okay. So I believe that it's important to say that this is going to be available to everyone from the chamber, and Gina has already plugged in the formulas. I know that some of you understand Excel, and I don't want to sound like, but yeah, where those yellow boxes are really the only place you're going to have to key anything if you're new to Excel, and then down in the, where you're putting in each item. But those formulas are going to stay there for you. We could even lock those cells. So anyway, if it seems a little mind-boggling looking at it, then we're here to help.
Right. And again, all of this information that I've highlighted here, these are just my made-up numbers. So these numbers can really be anything I want them to be. If my rent's $5,000, I could change that to $5,000, and it just, again, it continues to kind of calculate those remaining funds available. Again, if you did keep this in a separate spreadsheet, if you kept this in a separate banking account, what this would allow you to do is you could use this tool to reconcile your banking account every month to make sure that you're still on track with that account and with your spending.
Did you see that question that came in, Gina?
I didn't. Hold on. Let me find my chat window. Sorry about that. Please explain lines 5 and 6 again. Do we still have to pay? Okay. Yes. So the question is, please explain lines 5 and 6 again. So what I did is I realized that the new rule has changed, right? So the rule is now that 60% of your total loan cost needs to be payroll cost. So that is line 5. That is 60% of your total loan is for your payroll cost. I left in, and I've put it in gray. I left in this 75%, and this is just in case you received the money earlier and you're still on track to spend the money within those 8 weeks. I didn't want people to feel like they didn't have a tool to use then, right? So I just built it into the same tool. So if you received your loan early and you're on track to spend those 8 weeks and you want to take all that information to your bank right now because your 8 weeks period is up on, in this case, June 12th, and you've already spent $90,000 on payroll, again, on your $120,000 loan, then you can take this information to the bank and ask for the forgiveness. That's why I left those 2 lines in there. You won't need this line. This line 6 will be completely irrelevant if you're going to follow the 24 weeks and the 60%. Does that help? Okay, and then another question. How does the June 30th date of having all employees back? Okay, so I did not take into consideration any calculation based on the number of employees that you have back at this point. I didn't know necessarily how to create that into a spreadsheet. I will look into that a little more and can see what I can come up with as far as loan forgiveness. And I may need to talk to some of our banking friends to ask them that question. How does that relate, and how should I bring that into our tool?
Yeah, I also think maybe Alex, or they're not on, are they? To explain, because I think there's some gray area as far as how, as long as you have payroll similar to what you had prior to this, I don't think it necessarily has to be the same employees. But I wouldn't feel comfortable saying exactly what the rules are.
Right. So some of the, again, some of the new, and I stopped sharing my screen for just a second. There are 3 other pieces to this paycheck protection flexibility. One of them says that to ensure small businesses will not be penalized for high unemployment benefits. Again, there's some pieces of this that I'm not sure have been fully explained to us yet. And I think we'll see information come out this week to better explain those pieces. And again, to better explain the question that you were asking of, do we still have to bring back all of our employees before June 30th? Because that was a requirement of the first Paycheck Protection Act. I believe that may have some flexibility now, but I don't see anything here in writing. So I think we need to wait for the full bill to be out and published to us, and then we'll have a little more clarification on that. What other questions do we have? Maureen, you asked for some clarification, but I'm not sure exactly your question. Did I answer that? And you can feel free, Maureen, to unmute yourself if you have a direct question.
Yes, you answered my question as I was typing my question, and you already answered it. Thank you, though.
Okay, great. Thank you, Maureen. What other questions do we have out there? I know I went through the tool fast. Again, I'm going to pull it back up. I know for a lot of you, as Tyler said, if you're not familiar with Excel, it may seem overwhelming. I will email this out to everyone who has registered for today's webinar, and I will lock these cells with formulas in them. And then what you can do is, if you get this and you want me to have a one-on-one session with you where we go over it together, I'm more than happy to do that. But basically, again, when you receive the information, this will not be there because these are my fake numbers. So you will receive basically a blank spreadsheet. And these are these yellow highlighted boxes. These are the 2 boxes that you'll need to fill in order for these payroll costs and some of these other pieces, the dates, to fill out for the whole spreadsheet. I'm getting another question here. Let me just read this real quick. Okay. That is a little bit of a tricky question, I think. So I think if they refuse to come back to work, to lay them back off, no longer be covered. Again, I think it's based on your total payroll. So I would say that that employee was employed during that covered period, and you paid out payroll for that particular employee during your covered period. I would probably defer you to talk to your accountant directly or your banker directly regarding that specific question, Christine. I do feel like that's a little bit of a tricky one, with employees not wanting to come back, and then maybe it may be taking additional time off. If you are paying that employee, though, whether it be sick time or vacation, those things are covered under payroll. So consequences
on Tammy's question, it's now 60%. That 75% is now 60.
Yes. Yes, for Tammy. So that 75% last year during that 8 weeks is now 60%. And then you can use your other 40 for regular expenses. Any guidance on tax consequences? Did they update the taxability? Last I heard that we cannot deduct expenses that we used against PPP. You can deduct your state and the employer paid state and local taxes against PPP. And then there are some employee retention tax credits that you can take.
No, I think he's saying you can't deduct the expenses, period. And okay. I haven't heard that at all, but that's definitely an accountant question.
Yeah, that definitely is a question for your accountant. I am. Okay. All right. Let me see if we can conduct. So, Mike, I can send you. I was looking at this morning, and I'm sure you've dug into it more. with the Treasury. Could you unmute yourself, Mike, and maybe just explain your question a little bit? Because I'm, oh, okay.
I'm pretty sure it's saying you can't deduct the expenses, period, that you use for PPP
Oh, right.
as a tax deduction, basically, which would be not good.
Yeah. If they are forgiven, perhaps, right? So if they're not forgiven, then it's a loan and it's still your funding. It's still your money. If the loan is forgiven, then it essentially becomes a grant and you can't deduct those expenses that have been paid by someone else.
Mm.
Does that make sense?
Kind of, but I think we need clarity. Yeah, Mike's saying that. I mean, that would be a big deal if you can't deduct all that.
Let me get clarity and get back to you on that. That's a great question. Could somebody, Tyler, could you jot that down so that we can get clarity on that? And when I send out the tool, I will send out the information and clarity on that. I could get that from my resources this afternoon. Any other questions? Is this tool similar to those who have developed tools? Is this, do you think this will be useful to you if you haven't developed a tool yet? Okay, so that, great, Mike, thank you. I wanted to make sure that, you know, people were kind of using similar tools and that again, people understood kind of exactly what can and can't go in here. Any other questions? I don't want to keep you if I don't have to. So I think for us, the tool in of itself, again, is basic, but we wanted to make sure that it was useful to those who don't have an accounting background or those that maybe don't do a whole lot of their own bookkeeping and tracking. And for business owners at this point, it's really important for you to stay on top of this. So especially those that may have a bookkeeper or someone come in and do your expenses monthly. At this point, you know, doing it monthly, you're only seeing what's being drawn down every 4 weeks, and that could really mess up your forgiveness on this loan if you're not keeping close track of it. So I would ask for updates on this, or I would at least use a similar tool as the business owner, use this tool to track those, even if they're not exact, and then have your accountant or bookkeeper come in and track them that once a month that they're available. Any other comments or questions? So I'm going to do some tweaking to this tool to lock some of the formulas, and I'll delete my fake information in the tool. I will email it out to all who have registered for today's event, today's webinar. If you have any questions, you can certainly email me back and share those with me. I did want to put in here, or I did want to show you quickly, there's 2 tabs to this. The second one is just some notes for you that tells you vacation, sick time, healthcare benefits, all of the things that are, you know, kind of included with payroll, and kind of my ideas for things that, again, you might be looking at: telephone, cell phone expenses, electric, gas, water, sewer, I guess should be in here as far as utilities. Is there anything from any of the accountants or bookkeepers on the line that we may be overlooking as a utility expense that can be included? Or Tyler, is there anything that you can think of that I may have overlooked kind of in this list here. I know I didn't have, I put water. I'm gonna add sewer as a separate line.
On the additional payroll, you mentioned it, but it's not written in there as commissions.
Oh, commissions, yeah, under additional.
Oh, sorry, you have it up in payroll. Never mind.
Yep. Okay. And then somebody just said lease payments. Yes, so rent, lease payments. Again, it's only mortgage interest, so be aware of that. It's not full mortgage payment. Yeah, I just added sewer. And then I also just added those rent or lease payments.
Garbage, would that fall under that, Gina?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you, I would think garbage, anything that you're paying kind of regularly as a service should be included in here, because I think that all of those things would be forgivable. Everybody's going to see my typing skills. All right. Well, I think that's all I have. If you have no other questions, I will do the changes to this, lock out those spreadsheets, and get this tool over to you this morning. What we plan to do with our sessions this month is to, on Mondays, we'll go over a tool like this, something basic, helpful, useful for you, whether it be an Excel spreadsheet that helps you with PPP, like we did today, or budgeting perhaps, or whether we go over some internet tools that might be helpful at this time. So there's a lot of different things that we'll be looking at. Please let me know if you have questions with them. And then on Wednesdays, we're going to be talking about some industries that are rebuilding. So we're going to talk to some education professionals from our area, healthcare, and talk about what they're doing in those businesses. And then if you have something interesting you want to share about your industry or business, we can get you on during those success stories on Wednesdays. Fridays, we're going to utilize as kind of a question and answer. So what tools have we gone over? What questions do you have on those tools? If you feel comfortable talking about those, and it'll be more of kind of a follow-up, an open forum. We'll utilize that time as things change during this to help you with clarification and so on. So again, I thank you for joining us today. And we look forward to having you on Wednesday for our Restart, Rebound, Rebuild series with the Wyoming County Chamber of Commerce. Thank you so much and have a great day, everyone.